One of the greatest gap in the Exiled Media space is we don't even know how many Exiled Medias are out there. Like there's no one comprehensive report that can tell you this is the number of Exiled Medias out there, because there's a two person show somewhere and a 10 people team somewhere. There's all of these small outlets and bigger outlets all over the place.
This was an interview conducted at Splice Beta 2023, a media startup festival. I am Rohit Upadhyay, an independent journalist and YouTuber. I went to Chiang Mai for the Splice event and did some interviews with journalists from all over the world about the work they do. We talked about making journalism financially sustainable, covering a country while being exiled, fending off government pressure, mobile journalism, and much more. Here's the rest of the interview.
Hi, I am Sudeshna Chanda. I'm from India and I work in the Netherlands for an Exiled Media outlet.
What is Exiled Media and how does it differ from other forms of media?
Right. So, well, I'll caveat this by saying I've only been working in this sector for a little over 3 years. Well, going to be 4. But I can share what I have learned about this space. So Exiled Medias are often media outlets that are either established outside of their home country, which is where their target audience is, or were already in their home country and had to flee because of government repression, censorship, etc. So the difference between a traditional media outlet and an Exiled Media outlet is that often a traditional media outlet would be in the country that they are covering, the audiences that they are serving, whereas for Exiled Media, as is in the name, we are exiled from the home country.
Okay, so what challenges do Exiled Media organizations face in terms of funding, in terms of choosing topics? Like somebody is funding you, then they want you to do a specific kind of stuff. So what are the challenges?
Right. So specifically related to funding, one of the main challenges is being separated from our audiences in geography. And often our audiences are also in a situation where they can't support us very directly, be it because of censorship, because of state repression. So we can't really rely as much on reader revenue, which then ends up with us depending a lot on donor funding and grants. The issue with that again is that, well, they're great, they're very helpful, and that grants do have helped sustain a lot of Exiled Media outlets. But the issue with that also is that grants are often region specific. So if you are, say, in Europe, a grant maker from Europe would want you to cover European audiences. But again, being in exile, the challenge is where you are, your audience isn't. So if you are in Europe, your audience is elsewhere. And then finding a grant that is made outside of the home country but caters the home country is often a challenge. So there's that regional aspect to it. Besides that, there's also a lot of dependency then on grant makers, which I wouldn't say it impacts independence, because most of the Exiled Medias that I've spoken to, including mine, for example, well, the one that I work for, we are very strict about differentiating our editorial work from our relationship with our donors. So we're often very clear in our communication with the donors that we do the editorial work that we do. There is no compromising on the topics that we cover, and as long as the donor is okay with that, only then do we apply for those grants. So often we try to find a match between our editorial lines and grants that cover those editorial topics.
Okay, so what additional support does Exiled Media need when compared to traditional media?
Right. So one thing that I have experienced in the past 3.5 years of working in this space is a lot of the resources out there when it comes to revenue diversification, tools, etc., are catered towards traditional media outlets. But again, as I mentioned, there are several geographical as well as resource limitations to Exiled Media outlets. We are often smaller teams compared to traditional media outlets. So one of the things would be to create resources, be it like studies and guidelines, etc., that do take that into consideration. Another thing would be when working with donors or grant makers, reporting requirements are often long. So you have a lot of reports to write, you have a lot of quarterlies, a lot of documents to submit. And again, Exiled medias are often really small. There are some where the editor-in-chief is also the fundraiser for the organization. So then you're asking an individual to wear too many hats. So I think grant makers, donor organizations realizing that there is this resource limitation to Exiled media and easing on the requirements when creating grants for such organizations would be a great help. Also, the tech community. I mean, we can't talk about Exiled media in the digital space and not address the tech community. Because a lot of us depend on social media, on websites to reach our audiences, but also VPN providers for a lot of us. So the tech community needs to come together, and it is, to be fair, there's a lot happening around internet freedom. So the tech community needs to come together also to support Exiled media. It can be in many ways, and in reducing the pricing of analytics tools, for example. Digital security support for Exiled media journalists, digital health checkups, which again there are outlets that do, but I think a more concerted effort would be better to support the entire Exiled media landscape.
Any example you would like to give that how the companies which are working under this umbrella are helping each other?
Well, there are many. Like there are Exiled media outlets that collaborate with each other in investigations, for example, or reporting, or when something happens, for example, say in Karabakh, then Exiled media outlets that are from Azerbaijan can help other Exiled media outlets in reporting about these issues through their expertise, for example. But we've also recently, we being Zamaneh Media, which is the outlet that I work for, and 4 other outlets, we've launched NEMO, which is Network of Exiled Media Outlets. And the idea is exactly that, to create a database of knowledge, to create a space where you can consolidate as much knowledge for Exiled media as possible and as much support in terms of tools, in terms of expertise, resources. So any Exiled media that needs help can just go onto the website or reach out to one of the members and get the support that the network collates. And that also goes for many other organizations such as Free Press Unlimited, IMS, that also do similar work. They also, so that there is work happening. I just feel like it needs to happen together, like more consolidated, I guess.
Okay. So what role does international crowdfunding play in supporting Exiled media?
That's a fantastic question. I think it plays a substantial role, or at least can play a substantial role, because for most Exiled media outlets, there's a large diaspora for each of these countries that live abroad. And I think being able to tap into that, like reaching out to your diaspora audience, saying that, your donation will make news available in country for those who haven't left the country, is a huge opportunity for Exiled media to tap into reader revenue and keep news available in places where they would otherwise not be available. The diaspora, but also the international community beyond the diaspora, so the development community, just reading the news, right? Like finding these Exiled media. One of the greatest gap in the Exiled media space is we don't even know how many Exiled medias are out there. Like there's no one comprehensive report that can tell you this is the number of Exiled medias out there, because there's a two-person show somewhere and a 10 people team somewhere. There's all of these small outlets and bigger outlets all over the place. So I think doing a more comprehensive report, understanding this space better, because there's only very recently that Exiled media has come into the news and we are talking more and more about it and trying to understand the space. I think doing that, expediting that process, will help everybody know who to reach out to, who needs help where can we be of support. So yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.